Man, I can't believe how stable that thing looked in the air. It flew like a 450 size helicopter. It looked stable. It looked like you weren't fighting it at all, and you seemed to really enjoy flying it.
No, it never felt like it was out of control. It never felt like it was on the edge of wanting to wash out, which a lot of times these smaller ones just want to flare right out as soon as you get some decent forward speed.
No, it was enjoyable to watch. It really was. Let's go ahead and grade this.
Okay.
We've got a 5-point grading system for model characteristics and 5-point for pilot experience. Grading 1 through 5 on build as advertised. We gave it a 5. This particular model came out of the box with no adjustment needed, just as you see it, fully assembled, ready to go. So we gave it a 5. Finish, we also gave a 5. I was impressed with the finish when I saw it. It's a sharp-looking helicopter. I like the colors. I like the simulated carbon fiber windshield.
Yeah, my only thoughts are things I noticed on the construction itself. I didn't like the look of. Really, it was more the function of with the tails or the skids. The landing skids kept a lot of memory out of the package. And the plastic itself that they use, if you bend it, it'll stay in that position.
Yeah.
You got to kind of bend it back. It's a plastic, but the plastic isn't. It's very bendable or very elastic, but it doesn't go back to its original position. Other than that, it's very
Did it
nice
seem tippy on the ground with the skids?
They're narrow. They're more narrow skids. So yeah, when you get in the ground handling, it definitely is something you got to be conscious of.
Okay. Well, speaking of which, ground handling, you gave it a 4.5.
The skids affected that a little bit, but primarily it's the tag system, that triple axis gyro stabilization. When you're down in a hover, you feel that tag system doing its job. Which, if you have any helicopter pilot experience at all, or if you're coming off of a coaxial, which is mechanically stable. It just sits there in its own little pocket of air, and it doesn't really go anywhere. Typically, if it's trimmed out properly. With this, you have active gyros, stabilization, kind of moving that swash plate around a little bit, making sure you aren't drifting. Well, if you're in there trying to give it control inputs, and it's initializing and trying to counter a left or right drift, you may feel that it's a little bit out of control. It's not. Just give it a little more, get it out of that ground effect, and you'll feel the stabilization kick in. So. It just felt a little more loose on the very low ground effect hovering than some of the other models, but I think because of that electronic stabilization as opposed to mechanical stabilization.
Power, we gave it a 5. It seemed to have plenty of power.
Actually, more power than in a hovering scenario, an indoor flying, more power than you never need. But that really comes into play when you get outside. When you're ripping through the air, and this thing it has to get up to upwards of 30 miles an hour on forward flight, because it really moves out or can move out. You're going to want that power because it's a fixed pitch single rotor helicopter. So all you have is main rotor RPM to increase your lift, or elevator input, collective or actually cyclic input to pull back on that elevation. You're also going to want to be able to counter that with some power. As you come down and maybe you're coming in low out of a bank turn, you want that extra oomph, and this has plenty of power. Very, very impressed in the power.
Okay. A couple times during our flights before the review, obviously when we were messing around with a little bit for Kurt to get comfortable with the flight, there were a few times we banged it into things here and there. Not a hard hit, but just your typical.
And then we did some intentional hard hits.
Exactly. We
got to test it.
So durability, we gave it a 4. You agree with that, right?
Yes. With the tail rotor speed being constant, you have the typical consideration or concern when you're flying a helicopter that any tail rotor strikes are going to probably do some damage, and they will. They'll strip out the gears on the end of the torque tube. They give you some extra gears, and when you see it come out of the package, you think, all right, what are my spare parts? Those are most likely the things I'm going to break. That's exactly what happens. You'll actually bust the tips. You can bust the tips off the main rotor blades, which we did. A couple of drywall strikes, and the tips went flying. It actually still flew. It didn't mess it up. Didn't bend anything, but it just blew the tips off of them. So we did have to replace the main rotor blades, which they give you a spare set in the package. And tail rotor blades, I haven't had to touch. We've done a lot of strikes in the tail rotor, and the blades held up just fine. But the gears on either end of that torque tube, primarily the one up by the main gear, have stripped out. But
all right, on the pilot experience, flight as advertised, you gave it a 5.
5 out of 5. When we heard about the Novus 125 FP, and we were told how it should handle, and we also read about it on the online information and the product release, you have as expectation, hey, this is going to be really stable, but you give it a chance. You just go out there and try to fly it. And I think they undersold the stability, and they undersold the flight experience. You'll get so much more out of this helicopter than what they actually say you will. And you're going to notice that is when you get into forward flight. It is amazing. It flies like a much, much larger helicopter, which we all know is a problem with micros. They're inherently unstable. They're light, and if they throw in the mechanical stability, then they compromise on performance. This thing has the electronic stability and then the mechanical performance there, which just gives it so much growing room. So,
All right, flight time, we gave it a 5. We flew it for quite a while during the review. It's
6+ minutes you can usually get out of it.
Yeah.
About 6-7 minutes is no big deal. It's not difficult at all. So I say with that 600 milliamp battery, more than ample flight time. So.
Yeah. All right, field size, we've got a range of field sizes here, really a large house, gymnasium, park, a field. Where we flew it was not a large park. There's a nice sized grassy area next to the parking lot. More than enough room, but at the same time, you know, if you had your hands full with this being a newer pilot, that field could get small real quick, because I've watched you take it from one end to the other intentionally very fast.
Yep,
yeah,
they can move out.
All right, portability, we gave it a 4. The packaging that comes with the Heli-Max Novus and several of their products, it's got a clear, it's like a blow molded plastic basically that's got a secondary clear packaging over top of it. It can get a little tricky to get undone without, if you don't have the product properly packaged in there, you could break it by snapping that back on. So I think as far as portability, I think you'll agree with me. It's not as easy as flipping the box open, setting it in the container, and closing the box. So there's a little bit of messing around.
Yeah,
so.
in fact, what you'll probably find yourself doing if you're going to the park is throwing it in your back seat.
Yeah.
It's not going to hurt it a bit. I mean, it's a very durable aircraft itself.
Yeah. All right, skill level, we've got it as an intermediate.
Yeah, the last thing we can talk about is the actual skill level required to fly it. A basic or beginner pilot can fly this. And our model out of the box was solid as a rock. You bring it up into a hover, and it's right there performing well for you. So, but when it's a single rotor plane or aircraft, with it being only a single rotor, and they haven't really done a whole lot of stabilization again mechanically on the rotor blades. Some of those will have a real large taper, and they'll roll back a lot on the trailing edge of those main rotor blades, which that creates kind of a cup in the air, and it gives it mechanical stability. Mm-hmm. Again, compromising on performance. They kind of balanced out the electronic stability with the mechanical stability, so you have less inherent mechanical stability in the design of the rotor blades. With that said, you'll feel more drift as you start to move in forward flight, or you start hovering around the room. Yeah. You'll get more off-axis activity going on. Now, the tag system does kick in and helps correct that or minimize it to where it feels like it has mechanical stability, but it can drift off-axis on you. Yeah. So you have to think about how to correct for that. That's not a beginner move. That's more of an intermediate or an advanced beginner. You're just getting beyond that. I'm flying a double rotor coax, and the thing will just sit there all day long, and I can bop it up and down in the air. This is a more realistic helicopter experience with it being a single rotor. With the style of rotor blades.
You have to fly this one.
Yeah, you have to intentionally fly, and you have to learn the skills to be able to fly. Sure. With that said, though, don't be afraid if you're a beginner trying to move into that intermediate range. There's a lot of other helicopters out there advertised as the next step up from a coax, and they're not. No. I mean, they are clearly not. Yeah. This clearly is. A perfect step beyond coaxial helicopter flight is to go into the Novus 125 FP. Before the CP. The FP is phenomenal. So. Yeah.
I think Heli-Max really has hit the mark here on this size helicopter. Yeah. It's everything that we were expecting it to be, and probably more. I think you were surprised today when you flew that.
Yep. I have flown nothing else in this class that exceeds the experience that I got off the Novus 125. Yeah. I don't think anybody else is competing at this level right now, quite frankly.
Yeah, I agree. I think just looking at the products sitting here on the table, when you compare it to a lot of other helicopters, it just has the look of a high-quality product.
Well, that wraps up our review on the Novus 125 FP. If you have any questions that remain unanswered, you can go to the full review on our website at 2bfly.com. You can also click on the icon located in the lower left corner of each page that says Ask To and send us a message. We'll get back to you as soon as possible and post your question if it benefits the masses. I'm Kurt Gornick with Two Brothers Hobby.
And I'm Rob Gornick. Thanks for watching.